That is a way of demonstrating the basic experience which underlies some of the major forms of Oriental philosophy. And actually, this way of demonstrating it is taken from a kind of Chinese and Japanese Buddhism called Zen, which I'm going to be talking about quite a bit today, because Zen is one of the best examples of a philosophy, shall we call it, in which this experience is dominant. Zen, of course, is a Japanese word, and it's spelled Z-E-N. And that is the Japanese way of pronouncing the Chinese word Chan. And this, in turn, is the Chinese way of pronouncing an Indian Sanskrit word, dhyana. And dhyana refers to the kind of experience which has been represented in this circle. Another word for it would be a second Sanskrit term, shunya. And the nearest we can translate shunya in English is emptiness or void. And so we might say this is an experience of the void. Before trying to explain what this is, and you know the funny thing is it really can't be explained because it has to be felt, because it's a transformation of one's basic feeling, one's basic consciousness of life. But I should mention first that it is characteristic of Eastern philosophy to be based on experience rather than ideas. You see, philosophy in the Western world, especially as it's taught in our universities and academies, is mainly a matter of thinking. It's a matter of trying to arrive at certain clear, positive ideas about the nature of man, the nature of the universe, and so on and so forth. And also religion in the West is somewhat similar because religion is largely concerned with belief in certain ideas. In these basic forms of Eastern philosophy, on the other hand, such as Zen, which is a kind of Buddhism, or Taoism, the basic native philosophy of China, or in Vedanta, which is the central form of Indian philosophy, what is basic to them is not ideas, but a way of experiencing, a way of feeling. And this might be called, as it is here, the void, demonstrated by this circle. Because it is not a void which is just emptiness. This isn't the idea that there are people in the backward worlds of Asia who think that the universe is ultimately nothing at all. It is rather that the void represents complete spiritual freedom. Or you might say, if you don't like the word spiritual, complete psychological freedom. And therefore, I want to try, if I can, to communicate to you, to give you some idea of what this experience is. In Japanese, in Zen, it is called satori. I'll write that down. It's an unfamiliar word. S-A-T-O-R-I. And I like the way that that's pronounced in southern Chinese. They pronounce it because it's something that happens to you suddenly. Now let me try, if I can possibly, to put into some sort of words what this experience is. This experience, which so far as they are concerned, is the objective of human life. To get this is to understand the meaning of human nature and destiny. Only because it's a transformation of consciousness, because it's something you feel rather than something you think, it is for this reason difficult to put into words. But it is as if you saw quite suddenly, and indeed this experience could have happened to you. It can come without warning to anybody, and so what I'm going to be saying may strike a familiar ring in some ears. But it is as if quite suddenly you became totally convinced that the way everything is in this universe and at this moment is absolutely right. And that's almost putting it too weakly. I'm not trying to talk about a sort of Pollyanna feeling where we say, well, this is the best of all possible worlds, and everything, however evil and however wrong, is going to work out all right in the end because it's a means to an end in some master design. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it is suddenly feeling that everything is right the way it is now, however appalling, however terrible. And you know it beyond a shadow of doubt. There are two other aspects to this experience as well. And although you feel them all together, we have to talk about them separately. While the first aspect is feeling that everything just as it is so right that you could say of it, this is why I'm alive. This is what life's all about. The second is that everything you see and feel seems to come to life in an extraordinary way. You feel the world as you've seen it before was seen almost in a dream. But it is as if just the ordinary things that were confronting you suddenly went, yeah, and came alive. And the third aspect of it is that you no longer feel yourself and what you are experiencing to be separated. Although you don't lose the feeling of the outline of your skin, you don't forget that I, or Joe Dokes, is a possible name by which you can refer to yourself. Nevertheless, it suddenly seems to you that your skin is no longer what divides you from the world, it's what joins you to it. What you see outside you is also you. Now, we ordinarily restrict the idea of ego, of I-ness, or of you-ness to some sort of psychological entity or process inside us which is in control of things. And we identify ourselves with a sort of controlling center. But in this experience, it is as if that center were suddenly enlarged to include the whole universe. You almost feel as if you were God, except that in Eastern thought, one doesn't think of God as a kind of omnipotent person. I mean, there are lots of people in our asylums who say, well, I'm God. I always like the story of the woman who insisted that she was God. And to humor her, someone said, well, if you're God, will you please explain how you managed to create the universe in 6 days? She said, I never talk shop. It isn't feeling God in that sense, as if you could do anything. But it is feeling that you and this whole world are one. And that in this experience of oneness and the sudden coming alive of everything, and the profound rightness, that's the only word I can use, the profound rightness of each moment, of this moment, however far it may seem to be short of one's ideals of perfection. This is it. And you say, having seen this, I can die content. This is what it was all about.
Underneath it all, there's this vast realm of conscious presence. There is a presence there, without which you wouldn't be able to perceive anything, you wouldn't be able to think anything. It's a little bit like, I compare it sometimes to, before you live on the surface of the ocean, you're a little ripple on the surface of the ocean. And this ripple only knows itself as a ripple. And it looks at other ripples and sometimes feels threatened by other ripples or wants to use other ripples to enhance its own sense of self. And it's always fearful. It always compares itself to other ripples. A very unpleasant and frustrating way to live. It hasn't realized the depth of its being because the ripple is only a temporary expression of the vastness of the ocean. But it doesn't know that. So if the ripple for a moment comes to us, if the continuous thought, in this analogy, the ripple, of course, is the human being, and the ripple, when the ripple stops thinking for a moment, and this is the key, for a moment, you come to a cessation of the stream of thinking. And what's left when you're not thinking about your history, your personal history, or the future? You're just becoming aware of this moment, yourself, this moment. But what is that self? It's no longer the historical self. You can't say very much about it. There is an underlying sense of presence, of alive, conscious presence. It's still, but it's alive. The awakening can begin with realizing that you are not the thoughts that go through your mind. That's the beginning. Now, what has arisen at that moment? Awareness. Suddenly, you realize that there is a dimension of consciousness in you that's not thinking, but just conscious. And that is your essence identity. To be rooted in that, it's ultimately very simple. I don't know why they don't teach that at school. I mean, the most important life lesson is the transcendent dimension of life, of who you are. To find all the ancient teachings, using different terms and different words, they all point to this possibility of realizing the transcendent dimension of who you are. Whether the Buddha actually calls it, the translation is shunyata, emptiness, but the better translation would be spaciousness. That's the essence of who you are, shunyata, spaciousness. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven, which in my translation is not, I translated kingdom, I translate it as dimension, and heaven, which is the vast heaven. When you look up at the sky, that's the closest thing you can get to spaciousness in the sense-perceived world. The closest thing you can get to spaciousness is to look at the vastness of the sky or heaven. In many languages, heaven and sky is the same word. So you look at the vastness of sky, which is vast spaciousness. So the kingdom of heaven is the dimension of spaciousness. It's a dimension of consciousness. This is why then they asked Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? When is it going to come? And he said, the kingdom of heaven cannot come with signs to be perceived. You can never say it's over here or it's over there, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. In fact, he was saying it is the essence of who you are. Consciousness is, but it's not only the essence of who you are, it's the essence of the universe itself, because you are just a microcosm of the universe. So when you realize the essence of who you are, the universe is realizing its own essence through you, this little thing, through you.